What happened to the launch of the 6800 and the 6800 XT? Let's talk about stock and availability and why a lot of people are disappointed. Hey guys, Tiago here. So I'm sure today your inbox was inundated with various reviews about the RX 6000 series from AMD. And to give them credit, they're definitely great performing GPUs. For the first time, they're highly competitive. So on that front, we do have to give them all the credit where credit is due, much like in their battle against Intel. Now, the same thing does seem to be happening on the GPU side with Nvidia versus AMD. And of course, this is AMD's first foray into the really high-end GPU market in a very long time. We have to expect that there are going to be some teething issues and some other things that are going to happen. The GPU themselves certainly are a very good effort, but honestly, I don't think that many people care that it's getting a little bit better performance versus a 3080 or 3070, because most people were not able to get one and they're a little bit disappointed in this launch. So let's talk about what the expectations were, what possibly happened, and what's going to be happening going forward. So first, we are all very aware of the recent Nvidia RTX launches. I also want to preface this by saying that I'm making an effort soon to try to talk with somebody who knows about the actual industry, what goes on behind the scenes in terms of logistics, distribution, and manufacturing. That way we can all get a better idea of why this is actually happening, what's going on, why does it seem like the stock is so low. We know the demand is high, but I think it's going to be fair and balanced to look at it from the other side. There are a lot of things going on in the world now in 2020, we know that for sure, but I want to try to find out exactly why is this happening and with the logistics, supply chain, distribution, so that way at least we have a fair and balanced approach and that we know a real factual reason why the stock seems so low. I think this might be beneficial for the community, or else then people are a little bit in the dark as to what's going on. A lot of people are going to make assumptions that aren't true, so I'm going to see if I can put that together. If you guys have any questions that you think are very pertinent to this issue that could help us understand why these launches have gone the way that they have gone, why the stock seems so low, what could be the reason behind this? I know there are many possible factors, so leave your question down below and I'll definitely consider it as soon as I can talk with somebody and figure this out a little bit more. So let's talk about the AMD launch of the 6800 and the 6800 XT. Now, we can't talk about these GPUs without mentioning Nvidia's RTX 3080 specifically, because that was really the first one that set everything into motion in terms of what seems like really tricky launches. Basically, I know there's a massive amount of demand, but also stock did seem to be very low across the board, not only in places like Micro Center, which are physical stores, but basically everywhere else like Newegg and Best Buy, even from Nvidia's own website. So having said that, we look at the RTX 3080 and that launch was very difficult. It actually made gamers very frustrated, and it put into motion the series of events that basically turned everybody's enthusiasm for these GPUs. And believe me, the AMD and Nvidia GPUs both were hyped up a considerable amount, and in fact, after all of the reviews came out and people actually saw that the performance was actually pretty close to what they were hyped up to be. As we know in the past, like with the 20 series GPUs, a lot of people skipped on upgrading just because if you're coming from like a 1080 Ti, it didn't really seem like that great of a deal. The performance wasn't something that was really mind-blowing, and the 2080 Ti was very expensive at around $1,200. Having said that, people were hyped up for these GPUs, and with the 3080 launch, that quickly turned to disappointment because people were unable to even have a chance at purchasing one of these GPUs. From the websites, they sold out extremely fast. Of course, a lot of the blame goes to bots and scalpers that want to sell them at marked up prices on the secondhand market. But even with that, people were also frustrated at the various companies because they felt like the stock surely was not sufficient. Even Nvidia themselves had to apologize for how the launch went. They know a lot of gamers were frustrated, and they just said that they're trying to keep up with the demand as well as possible. And as they said it, the massive amount of demand really did surprise them. I think they thought they had at least enough GPUs for what could be considered a normal launch, or maybe a little bit below average launch, and instead they got an absolutely crazy amount of demand for something that they would have needed a significant amount of GPUs. So seeing the 3080 launch, the 3090 launch was the same story, and that's a very niche card, but that disappeared just as fast. The 3070 launch, in comparison to the 3080, seemed marginally better. For example, the 3080 Micro Center stores seem to have gotten maybe just like 10 GPUs to 15 GPUs. The 3070, at least they got well over 100 even by an email from Micro Center themselves. So that certainly was a step up, and I was looking forward to this AMD launch because I figured they're going to learn from everything that happened with the Nvidia launch. And then after seeing the 3070 launch, I became a little bit more optimistic because I thought AMD is watching what Nvidia has done. AMD even released a few papers to their partners saying that they want to reduce the amount of bots and scalpers. They want to make the entire process a lot better for the gamer, the enthusiast. They were really pretty heavy on that. So me, along with everybody else, had pretty high expectations that they would be able to deliver at least a little bit more than what we saw before. And then came the AMD launch day. Of course, people first were waiting in line at Micro Center, many of them for a very long time. And this is actually where we first started to see the news that this was going to be a very troubled launch. Even as people were waiting from the day before, a lot of them started to reach out on social media saying that they heard the Micro Center stores had a laughably low number of stock. I'm talking about maybe 2 to 4 6800 XTs, maybe like 10 of the 6800s. I certainly didn't see any numbers even above 20. So that was certainly a very low number because some of these Micro Centers already had way more people than that lined up that were surely going to be disappointed they were not able to get a GPU. You can see the reports on social media, even on YouTube. You'll see people posting videos that they weren't able to get it. So even before the actual GPUs launch, we already saw this coming from the people standing there at Micro Center. And of course, you got to remember, a lot of people were standing there in the cold. They really want a chance at these GPUs. So that's certainly a little bit frustrating. It's very disappointing. You really do have to feel bad for them because you would assume, at least if you're in the top 20, 30 people, if you're in line waiting in the cold, you would at least be able to get one of these GPUs. But the stock numbers seem as low, if not lower, than even the RTX 3080, which was pretty much the poster child for these troubled launches. And then the problems continued as the launch itself started after 9 a.m. First, there was a lot of confusion. People didn't know exactly where to go to buy these GPUs. Previously on videos, I tried to inform people as best as possible. There's Newegg, there's Best Buy. But then when the launch came, for example, on Best Buy, even hours after the original launch window, it was basically just saying coming soon, really making people a lot more confused. On Newegg, it seemed like if you search for certain terms, like the GPUs would come up, but if you didn't search for an exact term, they wouldn't come up. So there certainly was a lot of confusion around the actual launch. Even when we had an idea of when the GPUs were supposed to go on sale, they just didn't seem to show up at any time that really made any sense. So that certainly added to the frustration. Not to mention, anywhere that actually had the GPUs seemed to sell out instantly, much like the RTX 3080 launch. So all of this actually ends up being extra disappointing because of all the issues we had with the Nvidia launch. We kind of hoped that AMD would be watching and at least make a much better effort at getting things straight. Now, I really do think this is something that we have to actually dig deeper into to find out what's happening that this is such a big issue. Of course, there are many reasons on the surface. There are many things that we can point to, but the stock levels do seem very low. One possible explanation right off the bat, the ones that were launched first were the AMD reference models, so it's possible those are very limited in supply. And not to really bring up our hopes, but the sort of custom third-party cards are supposed to be coming, I think next week around the 25th or so. So is it possible that's really going to be the real launch? Do the third-party partner cards have considerably more stock than the AMD reference cards? Well, we would like to think yes, but once again, we really can't get our hopes up because in fact, even Asus in Europe, they had mentioned that especially the 6800 XT was going to be in really limited numbers, and they're talking about, of course, the third-party cards as well. So I think we really shouldn't get our hopes up. Of course, there are going to be more of these GPUs on the market when the custom cards come. The reference cards, of course, we can understand they may be a little bit more limited availability. Much like the Founders Edition, you're going to find less of those than you will like a lot of the third-party partner cards. So that certainly is a little bit of a possibility that we may see some more third-party cards coming, and it may alleviate some of these frustrations. But judging how these things have gone so far, I think we can only assume that the launch is going to be very similar, and people once again are going to see see low stock numbers with really high demand, and they're going to continue to be frustrated. And then another important point, and this is why I want to talk to somebody actually in the industry, and I'm going to take the questions from you guys. What's actually going on in these supply chains, the logistics, with all of the issues going on in 2020? Is that really having such a big effect? Is that really such a big bottleneck in all of this? That's something that I really want to know, and I think it's going to help all you guys, the entire community, at least shed some light as to what's going on. Because if you look at it this way, these companies want to sell these products. So if they can make even more of them, they're going to sell pretty much every one that they make. There's absolutely no reason for them to artificially limit the stock. I really disagree with that notion. I really think they all got blindsided by the massive amount of demand, and there has to be something going on with the logistics and the supply chain issues. If they don't sell all of this technology to make their money back from the millions and billions of dollars they spent on R&D developing all these products, pretty soon there's going to be the next breakthrough in GPUs and CPUs, and they're going to miss the opportunity. So I really think that they want to sell these, and in the future I really want to see what's going on behind the scenes. I think that's going to be a very fair and balanced approach. So good luck out there GPU hunting, as difficult as it may seem, and so good luck out there hunting for these GPUs, and I'll see you guys on the next video.